I am so proud to be a member of this coalition. I think we come from diverse backgrounds, political backgrounds, different sized cities. But what you're hearing is a unanimity of view that we are doing our share of this partnership. And that's what I think revenue sharing is. And that's what relationships between governmental entities is, between the state, between the towns, between the counties. We're in a partnership to make sure that our citizens prosper. That's our whole goal, is to improve the lives of our citizens. And we need to have the help and cooperation of the state to make that happen, so that we can make our communities thriving. Because that's what our goal is. And we can't do it when we're being literally starved. And that's what is happening. Is that gradually over time, we are going to see a starvation of services from our cities and towns. And the property taxpayer is going to bear the brunt of it. So I urge all of you and all of the citizens to contact your legislators and make sure that they follow through with the partnership that we are engaged in with them, and to make sure that revenue sharing is not suspended. Thank you very much for coming. We'd be happy to take any questions from you. Chris?
I'm just trying to get a feel, the coalition as a whole, have you taken a stance on what should be done? The Gardiner mayor suggested raising taxes. Is there support for holding off on those tax cuts that's been floated?
We've come up with a number of suggestions. You know, suspending the income tax cut is a possibility. Increasing the hotel and lodging tax is another option. A temporary increase in the sales tax as Mayor Harnett pointed out. I know nobody likes to use the word that, you know, it's always we got a spending problem, we got a spending problem. You know, we have a revenue problem. You can't run government. And as much as ideologically some people may want to think that government should go away and be flushed down the toilet, that's not going to happen. People don't want that. Our citizens don't want it. They want us to be efficient and effective and be responsible to it. And so you have to include revenue in the equation. And what we have suggested is a balanced approach to relieving the property taxpayer from the burden shift that's about to happen, or that's being proposed to happen, and that includes any number of those things, or a combination of those things. You know, we really don't take advantage you know, we're vacation land. You know, we're not taking advantage of the revenue source that we could in this state to help us deal with our revenue issue. And so we proposed a number of suggestions to the governor. He apparently treats them as all taxes. Well, you know, we have to use the R word occasionally, and that means revenue, a revenue discussion. We have that discussion all the time at the city level, and part of the dilemma, and I think one of the frustrations that we all have here, is that we are providing the bulk of services to our community and to our citizens, and yet our hands are tied. We're handcuffed. We have one way of raising revenue and one way only, for all practical purposes, and that's the property tax. And so while the partnership here with the state, you know, is supposed to be one that's you know, equal and participatory, we're basically being asked to provide extensive services to our citizens, but without the means to actually raise the revenue necessary. And in many cases, being mandated to, you know, to pick up costs, and then having revenue cuts imposed upon us. So there is a level of frustration, I think, that we can't seem to get through to the notion that you have to talk about revenues, and you have to have a balance of revenues so that we don't go through what we've been going through for the last 20, 30 years, which is constantly lurching from one financial crisis to another. And it's about time we actually had a system that created stability and predictability in the way we run government. And we happen to run government at the local level, and we think we need to have a partnership, and we're willing to fulfill our contractual obligation with the state. We expect the same from them. So, Thom, you want to talk about the three?
Well, very briefly, Chris. On May 13th, we issued a news release, and it was combined with a letter to the governor. And in the news release, the first option we talked about was suspending the pending income tax cuts. That would roughly result in about $400 million of money either coming back into the state that could be used to close the budget. MMA has done an analysis and has roughly calculated that the governor has shifted $400 million of spending to the local level. So there's almost an exact balance between the $400 million in the tax cuts and what has been pushed in the budget to local municipalities. The second thing that we offered was a sales tax increase and expansion of the meals and lodging tax, and the combination of both of those would produce enough income to offset the income taxes as well as address revenue sharing and other municipal spending issues. And lastly, you know, we said we'd be more than happy to work with the legislature on the Woodbury tax proposal. There are elements of that that we think would be favorable to the state in the long run and address some of the issues that Mayor Stokes talked about in terms of providing some predictability and stability moving forward. So those were the three options that we put forward to the governor, and we stand behind those and ready to continue to work with those options at this point.
Mayor Brennan, what effect does it have on the city of Portland, and anyone can address this or you can address it in generalized manner, when you have to postpone when you would normally pass your budget and start being able to prepare for the next year because there's so much uncertainty with whether or not you're going to have the money you expect to have? What effect does that have on Portland and other municipalities when you can't be conducting the route?
Well, you know, as I mentioned, everybody else I think has said the same thing. This is creating an enormous amount of uncertainty when you're trying to put together a budget, not only on the city side, but also with our school budgets. And many communities, because of state law, we have to hold referendums. We had to hold referendums in May, passing our school budget, not knowing whether or not the pension shift that the governor was proposing would in fact come true. So unfortunately what will happen, depending on what the legislature does do or doesn't do, there are some municipalities that are going to have to go back and rework their school budgets. There are going to be municipalities that are going to have to go back and rework their municipal budget. We, at this point, have constructed a budget that would have a 2.6% increase in it, assuming that we get flat funded for revenue sharing, that the better Betty reconfiguration does not go forward. We've also assumed that the pension shift of almost $1.3 million is not going to go forward either. So we've made all those assumptions, and talking to Jeff Herman at MMA and to other mayors, the assumptions that we made were in line with what other communities are doing, and apparently the overwhelming communities in the state that are passing budgets at this point are assuming at least level funding and revenue sharing. And there's not been one proposal now that the Appropriations Financial Affairs Committee has discussed that would fund revenue sharing at the level it was last year. So that's why we're here. And again, for so many people that have already worked in past budgets, assuming at least level funding, and to have the legislature at this point not even have on the table a discussion with revenue sharing that at least keeps us where we were last year, we felt we need to be here today and to make that case.
Are some property bills going out to people with all of this, and what happens if things come back?
I will let other people speak for themselves. We don't set our tax rate until late July or August, and so tax bills would not be going out. That's again, Chris, why we pushed off till June 17th in hopes of having a better understanding of what the state would do. So we could pass a budget on the 17th, but we would not be setting the tax rate to send those tax bills out until a month or two later.
A few weeks ago, the governor called revenue sharing subsidized local control, and he said that that he just wanted to have a dialogue with you guys about what to do. So I guess my question to you would be, is there any way to have a realistic adult conversation about this without raising taxes? Is that the only real option that's left on the table?
Well, the governor has also said, and it's on videotape, which I'm sure many of you have seen, when he was mayor, what actually he considered the lots of revenue sharing. And I can't repeat it here because it would be beat. But honestly, I think that there is a willingness on the part of the mayors and many people to have that dialogue, but the ideological position that government is bad is really the evil piece in the room that does not allow that. But government is good. I mean, where do the banks go when they need bailing out? Where do the car companies go when they need bailing out? You know, the cities and the towns are coming to the government to give us what we deserve. We don't need bailing out. As was said about the revenue in Bangor, we generate, these cities generate the kinds of income that's there for the government to spend on the things that we need. And we expect some kind of respect for the role that we play. And so there's a total willingness to have a discussion about that on the part of the people who are generating that income and are willing to help generate some more.
I had a chance to sit down with the governor early in this session, and actually I was an outlier with the Mayors Coalition. I was fairly aggressive that we need to look at ways to consolidate at the municipal level. And actually the governor made a commitment, and his staff made a commitment that they were going to work on some ideas and bring those forward. We're still waiting. And we have continued to say that if the governor wants to have a meaningful conversation of how we move in that direction, it can't happen overnight, but we're ready for that conversation to happen. So I think there's a dynamic here where the rhetoric is running ahead of the reality, that there is a commitment of the largest cities to sit down and talk about how we can do more, but you can't turn that on a dime. So if the governor has those ideas that his staff are working on, he's ready to talk with us about those. I think all of us are ready to sit down at the table.
And I'll just add, with the help of Mayor Labonte, we did meet with the governor about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, to have that very discussion. And we put on the table some ideas that we had about regionalization, and made the offer that Mayor Labonte just said. So, but you can't simultaneously say we're going to move to some of these other issues, and we're just going to go ahead and suspend revenue sharing immediately.
I just want to address the question about the impact on property taxpayers. You'd asked if we send our property tax bills out. They will not be going out until July, but we will be adopting our budget well before that. And what our taxpayers will hear is that we are making assumptions based on level funding. And with the cuts that we're making to the city budget, with the borrowing against the reserve, their property taxes will stay level. But what we also have to tell them as a city council, and we'll tell them in a letter most probably, is that if there are further cuts to revenue sharing, if there are further cuts to any revenue stream from the state to the city, our only alternative is to raise your property tax. So the uncertainty that we're feeling as city councilors, we have to then pass on to our property owners who we see in the stores, who we see on the streets, and I cannot look them in the face and tell you your property tax will remain level. I can't tell you it will remain level, and I can't even tell you how high it might go because of the uncertainty that we all face.
It seems like Democrats in this building are backing off their call to suspend the tax cuts that were passed in 2010. And Republicans in the building have repeatedly said no tax increases, period, at that point in state. If those two positions stand, how hopeless is this?
Well, that's why we're here. You know, it's getting to be crunch time, and we all recognize that. And you know what we're hearing is that what was unthinkable in January or February, as Mike pointed out, that everyone opposed the suspension of revenue sharing. Nobody liked, even the governor said he didn't like it. Has now sort of taken on, well, you know, we can live with somewhat reduction in revenue sharing. Well, you know, we're here to say we really need flat funding, at least, of the 98 million, which is down from the 5% we by law the cities and towns are supposed to get. It really is almost hard to contemplate that a law that was designed to allow municipalities to fund necessary services is called some type of subsidy. As Mayor Heck pointed out, that's where do you think the money gets generated? And if it's a subsidy to municipalities, what would you call that to the state? it's a huge subsidy to the state. And so it's causing us great concern. And the reason we're here is that, you know, as I said, what was unthinkable in February apparently is now there's going to be some type of acquiescence in a further reduction in revenue sharing. And I think that the public has to understand that this is a significant threat to our ability to provide services and our ability to stabilize property tax rates. And it is a threat to many people. We hear it in Augusta all the time. And my colleague, Councilor Bilodeau, will attest to it. We hear it all the time. Mary, you're here. You know, the people who are on fixed income, they budget for their taxes. You know, an increase of 3.5%, 6%, or whatever it is devastating to them. And they're not going to see the benefit of an income tax, of any significant income tax. What's being promised to them as an income tax relief is going to be eaten up and then some by property tax imposition. So I think the public has to be aware of what's really happening here and urge their representatives to intelligently deal with revenue sharing.
I'd also just say, I think it's disingenuous to say that there won't be a tax increase. There is a tax increase. Is it going to be a fair way to increase the taxes, or is it going to be an unfair way? Are there going to be some profiles in courage here, or are we just going to say, oh well, you know, you cities, you need to deal with that? It's disingenuous to say there's, you know, they're not going to increase taxes.
How frustrating is it that, you know, politicians at the state level are saying, well, we're not going to increase taxes, no new taxes, but then they're creating a situation where you will have to increase taxes.
How frustrating is it? Really frustrating.
Profiles in frustration.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking at.
I can guarantee you that when the property tax bills go out and they're higher, the people that are going to get yelled at are the people up here. It's often difficult for the public to recognize the causes of some of this. They're all going to yell at us. So we feel like we're being thrown to the wolves. You know, we're not going to raise state taxes. You guys do. And when we do it, it'll be all our fault. So yes, we're very frustrated.
I would also say that the next level up is the representatives and senators who the people are going to be. And that's what I've been directing people to all along. You know, they work for us. Go talk to them, because it really will. It'll come down to, in the next election, you know, who did the right thing for taxpayers. I hope that's what it comes down to.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.